All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? And welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk, the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I am your tour guide around the SWAC. See what's coming at you, and we are continuing our series of SWAC Power Rankings. We this is the fourth set of these rankings that we've done. We're finishing up the fifth week of basketball, so we've been seeing some movement up and down. A lot of teams, especially in the middle, have been kind of jumbling up. We've seen a couple teams rise up from the bottom and one team drop from the top to the bottom. And so we're going to continue to see how things go after this weekend. Um, so we're gonna do this to the end of the season, and I am gonna probably do a version of this for the women. For the women, maybe in a couple of weeks I'll start doing that. We also have our National Signing Day coverage tomorrow. Keep it locked to my socials: Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Keep it locked there to see when that video will drop. Also, we have Swag Smoke live on Thursday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, I'll have my picks for Saturday's game. Sunday, we'll recap those games. And yesterday, um, told my butt up. I went 1-3 on my picks, so really rough day for me. Try to bounce back on Saturday. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, and share your thoughts on this. Who do you think should be anywhere on this list? Is somebody too high? Is somebody too low? Let me know what's what. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And we do have a new number 12 on this list. Um, Valley is not number 12 anymore, at least for this week, um, because they were able to go to Pine Bluff and knock off the Golden Lions. So Pine Bluff's disappointing season, it continues. This team, I don't know what wrong. I don't really know what's wrong with them. They play pretty solid offensively. Um, they average 74 and a half points per game, which is actually third in the league. But defensively, they have the worst scoring defense, allowing almost 90 points per game at 88.9, and they have one of the worst scoring margins, negative 14.4. So they just don't really do a lot on the defensive end, and that's one of the reasons why they dropped from number 11 to number 12. They gave up the highest points that Valley scored in conference play this season, and so they dropped the Golden Lions from they dropped them to 0-8 and 3-18 in conference. They dropped, like I said, they dropped from number 11 to number 12. They were 0-1 this week, and they have a game tonight against Texas Southern. But I'm going to add that into next week's rankings. So they get Texas Southern at home, and then they got to go to Alcorn and Jackson. So they have three tough games coming off of a loss to Valley. Um, I think they're gonna probably end up. They could easily be 0-11 by this time next week. And like I said, it's confusing because when you look at what they've done in conference, they just don't. They just can't really get it done. Um, they just can't really get it done on the defensive end. They shoot 44% from the field, which is third in the conference. Defensively, their opponents shoot 47%, so they don't really do a good job of stopping teams. Um, they shoot 31% from three, and the opponents shoot 35%. So again, they just haven't. I think defensively is the side of the court where they struggle at the most, just like last season, but it's almost worse this year. They also they're an average rebounding team. They're at about 36.1 rebounds per game. That's right in the middle. Their opponents average 36 and a half rebounds per game. So that's pretty even. Um, I'm just trying to find what's the problem. They average 13.9 turnovers per game. They average 13.3 assists per game. So their numbers aren't really that bad, especially on the offensive side of the ball. No, they don't really protect the rim very well. They only have 2.1 blocks per game, and they don't really get a lot of steals. They average about 7.8. So, like I said, you see on that side of the court, they really struggle stopping teams. And last week against Grambling and Southern, Dr. Bradley, who is their top scorer and really the conference's top scorer, He had a rough 2 games there. Scored under 20 points in both of those games. And he did have a good game against Valley, and he's averaging 22.8 points per game, but they're not really getting anything consistently from anybody else. Christian Moore right now averages 10.8 points per game. He's shooting 37% from the field. He's also shooting 26% from three. Um, and also Caleb Jones shoots 43% from three. But Dr. Bradley really is their team. He leads the team in points and rebounds, 8.8 rebounds per game. He leads the team in assists at 4.1 assists per game. He leads the team in steals with 23 per game. And he leads the team in blocks with six. So they need somebody else to step up and help him. Um, because he's a guy who can score. But I've seen in a couple games where teams are able to keep him away from the basket. He doesn't really shoot threes. He only has 7 3-point attempts in conference play. So because of that fact, if you can, you can probably zone these guys and make the other guys have to beat you shooting the ball from outside, and they can knock them down, but they're not consistent. And if you keep him from scoring, then there isn't really anybody else that's gonna take up the reins and just go lights out on you. So that loss to Valley really stings, man. Like I said, that really turns the tide on the season. And you go from possibly being a team that can sneak into the tournament to a team that might not be able to get close to it at all. So this week coming up is huge to starting the night. They really need to win 2 out of 3 to even get themselves any kind of hope moving forward. But I just don't see it, and that's why they're my number 12 team this week. And like I said, speaking of number 11, that's Valley. They pick up their first D1 win of the season and their first conference win of the season. Um, and so they jumped from 12 to 11, and they moved from they move up to 1-8 and 3-19 overall. They went 1-0 this week. That's all you can ask, 1-0 every day, and they did it. And like I said, they go to Jackson on Saturday and Alcorn on Monday, so they get, they come off of that big win with two big in-state rivalry games that on the road. So they're gonna have to really buckle in if they want to try to make something happen. They still aren't a great team. I mean, they also have some controversy swirling around with them with some kind of throwing of games or whatever. I haven't really got too deep into it, but I don't really know about that. But I'm gonna research that a little bit. But right now they're averaging 58 points per game, which is last, and they're giving up 76, which is 10th in the league. Um, they don't shoot well. They shoot 40% from the field. Their opponents shoot 47. This team typically plays a slower pace. They were able to get up and down against Pine Bluff. They scored 79 points against Pine Bluff, but that game may be an outlier. They only shoot 27% from three on the season, and they only make 4.6 threes per game, and the opponents make 38% from three, which is next to last. They've been beating on the boards. They give up 31. They average 31 rebounds on the season. They give up 36. Um, Turnovers, they obviously turn the ball over a lot, 16.1 turnovers per game. They force 11.8, which I think is the second fewest forced in the conference. So, they all of this goes hand in hand with a team that is not a good team. They average 9 assists per game, which is not unheard of for a team that doesn't score a lot. They don't block many shots. They only have 1.6 blocks per game. They average 5.7 steals per game. So they just, numerically, it's just been rough for them. And they got a good game from Arthur Tate on Saturday, and he's the leading scorer on the team now at 12.4 points per game. He shoots 29% from three and 45% from the field. He averages 4.1 rebounds per game. Also, Alvin Stredick continued to be a steady guy for them at 11.5 points per game, and he averages 5.8 rebounds per game. Also averages 1.1 assists per game. And Donovan Sanders is the point guard. He averages 2.8 assists per game and 8.5 points per game. Um, so they have some guys individually who are pretty solid. They just don't have enough. And like I said, they ran into a Pine Bluff team that was really reeling, and so they were able to steal that victory. I did not think they had any chance of winning that game on Saturday. And that takes us to our number 10 team on the list, and that is the Prairie View Panthers. This team continues to be ice cold. They've now dropped their fifth straight game of the season. Um, at one point, this team was 3-1, and I had them pretty high on my first ranking, and now they're 3-6, and they have dropped to number 10. Although they did stay at number 10 last week, um, they didn't move anywhere. But now they're 3-6, 4-18 overall. They went 1-0, 0-1 last week, losing to Texas Southern. They get Bethune-Cookman and FAMU at home this weekend. This team, again, this is one of those teams that you can kind of see where this team issues really coming. Their main issue is rebounding. They average 30 rebounds per game. They give up 37, so they are getting out rebounded by at least seven rebounds per game on the defense as a whole, which is last in the league. Negative 7.4 is the rebounding margin. So they really struggle on the rebound. They don't do a good job on the offensive glass. Really, at only 8.9 offensive rebounds per game. They don't really have that size inside to really be competitive with teams. Um, they score 72 points per game. They give up 74.2. So not a bad scoring margin for a team that's as cold as they are. But they do shoot well. They shoot 44% from the field, which is second in the league. And they defensively they do give up a lot of buckets. They give up 46% field goal shooting. Um, their 3-point shooting is at 32%. Their opponents shoot 28%. So they do defend the perimeter well. They just struggle inside, and that's been one of the issues that's really hurt this team. Is if you can do some work inside, you're gonna really hurt them. But they do lead the league in turnover margin. They do a good job of forcing turnovers. They average 17.2 per game, which is tops in the league, and they average 13.6 assists per game. I mean, it's 13.6 turnovers per game. They average 11.8 assists per game, and they do a good job getting their hands on the ball and forcing steals. Even though they're not a great rebounding team, they do protect the rim pretty well. They average 3.7 blocks per game, um, and they lead in the second in the league with 9.8 steals per game. So they can turn you over and get those buckets that way. But if they have to really, what I'm saying, get in there and grind it out with somebody, it's not really going to happen for them. But they do have a weapon in Tanaj Petway. He averages 21.5 points per game. Also, Braylon Bush is at 16, so they have two of the top scorers in conference. But they just, as a whole, they're just getting beat on the boards, and I think that's one of the reasons it's really hurting them. They shoot, they shoot pretty well as well. Like I said, when you look at their numbers, um, Bush shoots 44% from three. They do shoot a lot of three. There are three guys with over 40 attempts in conference play. So that's one of the things that really, kind of puts them back. But they also have five guys with double figure steals. So this team is an enigma. They probably should not be at the spot that they're at. This team probably should be, a lot higher. They've lost a couple games over close. They had a couple games get away from them. They've lost games almost any way that you can lose them, and that's one of the reasons why this team is where they are. So it's not a lot to really, really take from what they're doing. You really just want to be able to give yourself a chance and win games. So, starting this weekend against Bethune and FAMU, they really need to win these games. Said that the previous home weekend, but it's imperative if they want to stay in the hunt. They need to win. They need to win out at home. They need to win at home. It's cut and dry. So we'll see. We'll see how they do. But right now, they're still my number 10 team. Didn't move at all. Number 9 also didn't budge, and that's Grambling. Grambling had a rough weekend. They had a tight game at the half against Jackson State. Ended up losing by 15. They had a game against Alcorn. Was never really there. I don't understand this team. They're 3-6. In conference 7-15 overall. They went 0-2 this weekend. They go to Bama State and Alabama and them on Saturday and Monday. Like I said, I've been really giving Grambling a lot of grace because I feel like you give your champ grace until they're not champ, and with a tournament setting, they're gonna be champ until they get knocked out of the SWAC tournament. Regular season championship is out the window. Now they just need to kind of get themselves a decent seed. Although if this team, I do still think this team could be dangerous even as a lower seed because their struggles have been on the offensive side of the ball. Really, they're next to last in scoring at 63 points per game. They give up 67, which is not a bad number. Um, so they're at a -4 points point differential. Like they struggle shooting from the field at 41%. Defensively, they haven't played that Grambling defense. Opponents are shooting 44%. They struggle from three at 30%. They make 5.8 threes per game, which is the fourth fewest. The opponents shoot 39% from three. So this just has been an uncharacteristic Grambling team, especially on the defensive end of the court. Um, and that's really done them in. They aren't really a force on the boards like they normally are. The size is not really there. They average 31.8 rebounds per game. They give up 33 rebounds per game. Turnovers there at 13.4. They forced 13.7. So not a lot there either. Um, they average 10 assists per game. And when you look at like I said, what they've done inside, they only average 2.8 blocks per game, which is not grounding basketball. They usually have the size that can get you out of there and swat shots away, and they average 7.8 steals per game, which is about average in the league. I know they haven't really, guys haven't really been playing spectacular. Dozier has been up and down all season, but he's averaging 10.8 points per game. Barnett is at 10.7. They both are. Dozier shooting 36% from three in the conference, which that number has improved. Other than that, Stevenson shooting 38% from three as well, and Newton is shooting 41%. But neither one of those guys has made multiple double-digit threes other than Dozier. Burnett averages 5.6 rebounds per game. Stevenson is at 5.1. Stevenson also leads the team with 3.4 assists per game. Kind of like what I said about Prairie View. This Alabama trip is huge for Grambling. I think they need to, obviously, anytime you step on the court, you want to win, and you feel like you should win. But this is a must-win weekend for Grambling. I normally say going one-on-one on the road is a good thing, but I really think if they want to make a push, they need to sweep this road trip because they didn't really play great at home, and when you lose at home, you need to make it up on the road. And so, dropping two at home means you definitely have to win two on the road if they want to stay out of that 9-10 play-in type of situation. They have to play themselves into the regular bracket. So you don't want to give yourself an extra game to play in the tournament. So if you can get yourself into a 6 seed, which I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but it's not out of the reach because the teams in front of them are only 2 games in front of them right now, so they're not far out, and they have to still play some of those teams again. So they're not far out of it. But they really, if they want to make that push, there's only 9 games left in conference, so they need to start that push now, and it starts with this road trip. If they can make a move, it's going to have to be by winning both of these games. And the team they face on Monday is the number 8 team, and that's Alabama A&M. They went 0-2 on their road trip. They're 3-6, 7-15 overall. They get Southern at home on Saturday, Grambling on Monday. They need these games too. Like I said, this whole bottom portion, this is a big weekend for these teams. A&M, I think they're a team that I keep saying I like what they do on offense, but it's just something that's just not clicking for them to get them over the hump record wise. I mean, they block 4.6 shots per game. They're really good there. They don't really force a. They average 7.8 steals per game, and they're forcing 15 turnovers per game. They turn the ball over 18 times per game. That number really came down from 22 early in the season. So they're getting better protecting the ball, but they're still turning over a lot. And they average 13.8 assists per game, but their assist to turnover margin is really bad because they turn the ball over so much. Then they lead the league in rebounding. So they do that. It's almost like what they do good, then they do something bad. They average 39 rebounds per game. That's down from 41 a couple games ago. They give up 37 rebounds per game. So they are not beating teams up on the boards, but they do a good job of rebounding. Um, they haven't really shot the three well. They're shooting 30%. They're giving up 33% shooting from three. They do make a lot of they have the second most makes at 8.4 threes per game. They do shoot a lot of threes. They lead the league in 3-point attempts at 248. So they do let it fly. They're not scared to shoot it. It's just not falling for them. So if that ever changes, that could be the difference between the team being a 8 spot and being like a 5 spot. They need those shots to fall because if they if they have to kind of run an offense, the turnovers start to happen. So they really need to do that and keep themselves in these games because opponents are shooting 44% from the field. And even though they shoot a lot of shots, they just aren't consistent making them. And they're shooting 41% from the field. And all of that, they still lead the league in scoring offense at 78.7 points per game. So it's just an enigma. They give up 80, so they just this is probably the most confusing team to me. When you look at some of the things they do, you like, well, damn, they should be higher than they are. Then you look at other parts of what they do, and you're like, well, they might be right where they should be. But they do have guys who can play. AC Bryant averages 17 points per game and 5.4 rebounds per game. Chad Moody is at 10.7 points per game and 7 rebounds per game. Lorenzo Downey, another guy who had a great tournament last season, he's at 8.2 points per game and he averages 4.5 rebounds per game. Um, they have basically the whole team does a good job of sharing the ball. Everybody pretty much is at one assist or higher who plays significant minutes. So they share the ball well. Um, Moody has 26 blocks on the season, so he's definitely a force inside. Um, and like I said, they shoot a ton. They're just not falling. If that changes, this team will make a rise. And again, this is a big weekend for this team. They need both of these games. I know they're playing Southern Saturday. Southern, is not invincible. Southern's number one, but they've had some close games. If they can find a way to play a great game, they'll find themselves in that game. And they really need to they need to make a push and they need to start now. There's only 9 games left. So if you want to make a push, you got to make it now. Because you don't want to wait too late and you find yourself trying to fight for that last spot. But right now they're at number 8, and that's where they were last week. And we'll see how they do moving forward. Number 7 is FAMU. This is a big drop for a team who climbed up to number 4, but the teams in front of them, they both won yesterday. 2 teams that were tied with them, they both won yesterday. They lost yesterday, so they lost to one of the teams that's tied with them. So I couldn't put them ahead of that team. And even though they beat the other team in a couple weeks ago, they still just lost recently out of the group. So I dropped them from 4 to 7. That 5-game winning streak they had got snapped in a 1-point loss to Bama State. They're 5-4, 8-12 overall. They went 1-1 this past weekend. They got a tough road trip at Texas Southern at Prairie View, so they have to go on the road and get themselves back right. One thing that this team has done well, especially in this winning streak, and that's shoot the three. They're shooting 37% as a team. They're making 9.6 threes per game, almost 10 threes per game. They shot 232 of them. They lead the league in makes at 86. I think that's their strength out of everything. They do shoot 44% from the field, so they are a solid shooting team, which has been, like I said, their strength this winning streak. They average 72 points per game. They're giving up 70. When you look at what they do defensively, the opponents shoot 43%, and opponents shoot 34% from three. They've been kind of beating on the boards a little bit. They average 35 rebounds, but they've done a decent job winning rebounding battles. They allow 31 rebounds per game, so they do have a positive margin there. They don't really force a lot of turnovers, so they're really not gonna be the kind of team to kind of turn you over and get the buckets that way. They really been getting their buckets on transition threes, also just straight pull up threes and working the ball around and hitting Matthews and Young for threes. And they average 14.2 turnovers per game. They force 11.6, which is the fewest in the league. They average 12.7 assists per game, and they block 3.2 shots per game, and they average 4.6 steals per game. So, like I said, they're not really the kind of team to get in your chest and make you turn the ball over. They just been getting it done with shooting, honestly, and that's tough to maintain. But when it goes right, you get a game like they had at Alcorn where your two top dudes hit 9 threes, in a short span and get you in the game and keep you in the game. Um, they're gonna see, we're gonna see if they can bounce back. They've been cruising, but now that they dropped the tough game, let's see how they respond. Sterling Young averages 20 points per game. He shoots 47% from three. Milton Matthews is at 17 points per game. He shoots 40% from three. Those are their guys, honestly. Other than that, you don't have a lot there statistically. They have a lot of guys who kind of play their role, but they just don't. If you can not stop them kind of guys, but if you can maintain those kind of guys and make somebody else beat you, um, you got a better chance against this team. But lately, those two guys have been on fire, and so that's really really where they are right now. They're two horse team, man. So if you can control those guys, then you got a great chance. If they get hot, I think you're in trouble. Um, and so I think they're gonna be a team who is gonna be in the mix in the middle of everything. I don't think they're gonna challenge for a top seed, but I do think they're gonna be a team who is gonna be one of those mid seed teams that you may not want to play in the first round. If they like a 6 or a 5 seed, you may not want to see them in the first round because of their shooting, but also because of that. And sometimes teams shoot bad in that tournament, and they're in a new location. Teams haven't played. Some the SWAC teams haven't played at the arena, so maybe that affects people shooting in the tournament. But we'll see about that when we get there. But right now, I do think that they are gonna be one of those teams that's in the middle, and you may not really want to see them early. You got to see them late. You got to see them late, but you don't want to see them early. Um, and get knocked off by a team that drops threes on you. That takes us to our number 16, and that's Alcorn. The Braves have been up and down, and they had a solid weekend. They went 1-1 on the road. They were number 5 last week. They really only dropped because the team who was number 6 won last week. So they really dropped because they kind of had they won as well, but they lost a tough game on Saturday. So I kind of flip flop those two teams, but they get Pine Bluff and Valley at home, so I got an opportunity to get right. They're 5-4, 5-17 overall. Um, they went toe to toe with Southern this weekend. Made big shot after big shot. Just came up short. They went to the ground and they picked up a big win. So I think this team is a dangerous team. Um, Again, like I said, they're in the middle of the pack. They don't really score a lot of points, but they're active on defense, and so they like games to be like in the mid 60s. They score 66 points per game. They give up 64. So they don't really want a high tempo game. They want to get in there and get and harass you on defense. And if one of those games their shots are falling, then you can be in trouble. They've been improving with their shooting as the season went on, which is a scary thing for people. They're shooting 43% from the field. Defensively, they give up 41%. So like I said, they're a good defensive team. They harass you. They very aggressive on defense. The opponents are shooting 28% from three, which is second in the league. They shoot 32% from three, which is last in the league. They've made 53s on the season, which also is second to last, and they make 5.6 threes per game. But they do have some guys who can drop that shot if they get hot. And that was kind of what happened with Southern. They kind of would hit a big three here, hit a big three there, and kind of keep themselves in the game or pull ahead. Alcorn, again, kind of like Grambling, is not that typical Alcorn team that's really physical inside. Now, Benet is a good body inside. I mean, he has some nice moves around the basket, really aggressive, really physical, as a defender. And like I said, as a scorer, he got a nice little spin move to get to the basket. That I like to see. I like to see guys, put in work in the post. And Benet is one of those kind of guys. So they do have him as a presence, and so that does help. But Cornelius has shot the ball better as the season's going on. He's shooting 38% from three in conference, averages 11 points per game. This team has four double-digit scores per game, so they do have some ability. I think a lot of people slept on Alcorn early. Um, they just, like I said, their shooting was kind of off early in the season, and that's kind of been what kind of held them back. But they can surprise you if you're not careful. They're not flashy. They'll do a lot of great things, but they're very solid defensively, and they harass you. They force 13 turnovers per game. They average 15. Um, they average 9.7 assists per game. So they still haven't really moved the ball well as offense, and they block 3.2 shots per game. They average 7.3 steals per game, which is eighth in the league. So they will, like I said, they will get out there and they will give you trouble. Um, this is going to be a team again who is tough. They're going to be a tough out because you just gonna have to buckle up. I won't say buckle the chin strap, but it's wrong sport. You got to lace up your sneakers, man, and get ready for them to get on you. So they're going to be a team who I think can again a team who's going to be in that 4, 5, 6 range. They're going to be a tough first round matchup. This weekend is good for them. They get two games that they should win. You don't want to count any game as a win before you play it, but playing the two bottom teams definitely give you a chance to put together a little winning streak. And so, once you do that, who knows where you go from there? And so that takes us to our number 5 team, and that's Bama State. They picked up a big win last night, knocking off FAMU, snapping FAMU's 5-game winning streak. The Hornets are a team who, again, I like this team a lot. They're the kind of team that's not really, spectacular. They have some talented guys on their team, and they're another team who's not scared to shoot the three. They shot 235 threes on the season. They've made 73, so they make 31% from three. They're kind of like Bama A&M in that way. They shoot a lot of them, but they don't really knock down a lot. So if that shot starts to fall, that can give you some trouble. And they have some guys who can knock that shot down. And so if you can get those guys to get hot for you, um, that really would change the game for you and put you in a better position. And so I think this is the kind of team who you got to be careful with this kind of team because they will sneak up on you. And if you get caught up in looking at their record, you're probably going to get beat. At the very least, you're going to be taken to the wire. They have three guys in double figures. Madlock's at 11 points per game. Hines is at 14.8. Knox is at 15.2. Um, they all, two of Knox and Hines, they both shoot three decently. Knox is at 32%. Hines is at 36. Simpson is at 36. He's made, they're both, Simpson and Hines have both made 16 threes. Hines has shot 45. Simpson has shot 44. Octave is 8 for 32 on the season. So they do have some guys who, like I said, who can let it fly. Um, and I think that, that the fact that they got the green light to shoot threes like that always is going to either be good for you or bad for you. If those shots fall, then you have a chance to come back in a game like they did against Alabama and them, or are you going to shoot yourself out of game? So it's feast or famine in that way. TJ Madlock averages 8.4 rebounds per game. Really solid guy there on the boards for them, kind of do it all type of guy. Um, but this team, they average 71 points per game. They give up 70 points per game, so not a big scoring margin. They shoot they don't really shoot well because they shoot and miss a lot of threes. Their field goal percentage is at 40%, which is last in the league. Defensively, they're pretty average at 42%. Their opponents um, shoot 33% from three. When you look at what they do on the boards, they are an average rebounding team at 35.8 rebounds per game. The opponents average 38.7, so they do get beat on the boards pretty regularly. The one thing I say about Bama State, and I've said it all year, they do not turn the ball over. If there is one thing I say about this team that keeps them in games, is the fact that they don't turn the ball over. They only average 8.9 turnovers per game. Now, they don't really turn you over a lot at 13.4, but that's still a good turnover margin, which that margin leads the league at 4.5 turnover, 4.5 in the turnover margin. Um, and they they're solid with assists, but they don't have great assist numbers. But their assist to turnover ratio looks good because that turnover number is really low. They average 10.9 assists per game, which is ninth in the league. So they're not great with that, even though they have two guys who can play that point spot. They're not a great ball moving team, but they just don't. They're just not careless with the basketball. They don't really block a lot of shots at 1.8 blocks per game, and they don't really force a lot of steals at 7.1. So this team is kind of one of those teams that you kind of don't really want to see them at times, because if they're hot, it's gonna be tough for you to come back on them, because you're not gonna be able to just win this game because the team is sloppy with the basketball. And so if you're trying, if your philosophy is to turn teams over, then you're trying to make this team do something that they don't do. And so if you can do that, then you're probably gonna beat them. But more often than not, even if they don't lose, even if they don't win games, they still don't turn the ball over a lot. So I think they're a tough matchup for teams who are kind of turnover makers, because they're not really going to do that. But like I said, if the floodgates open and you force a few of them that they don't normally make, then you find yourself in a decent position, because they don't really shoot well. So if they can, if you make them have to play a half court game, or have to just take set shots, then you probably got a better chance against these guys um, than normal. And so that takes us to our number 4 team, which dropped from number 3, because they lost last night, and that's Jackson State. They dropped to 6-3, 6-16 overall. They dropped from 3 to 4. They went 1-1 this weekend. They get Valley and Pine Bluff at home, so that should be a good bounce back for them. They were one bad foul, one brain fart away from maybe winning that game yesterday. So they have a talented team. Jackson State is a really talented team. They got inside presence, they got outside presence. They got good slashing guys. They shoot threes well. They've been a little cold the last couple games, but they're gonna score points. They average 78 points per game. They do give up a lot of points at 75.2. So they're gonna have a lot of up and down games, and that kind of suits what they're made for. They shoot 43% from the field. The opponents shoot 42%. Like I said, that 3-point shooting is where they shine at 36%. Although they have been a little cold these last couple games. The 3-point per game number went from like almost 9 to 6.9. So they like I said, they really cooled off there. They allowed 32% shooting from three. To say, one thing I'll say about this team is to say they have a good size. They have some good size in Grant and Mansell. They get beat on the boards, which obviously you have two guys who are your bigs. If they get in foul trouble, you have a lot of other guys who are more perimeter type guys. So you don't really have that other guys that's going to get in there and just bang bodies. So they do get beat on the boards from time to time, but their offense is what really keeps them in games. And they don't really turn the ball over a ton. They're at 13.6, which is eighth in the league. Um, and they force 14.4 turnovers per game, which is kind of right there in the middle. They average 12.1 assists per game, which is about average. They block 3.5 shots per game, and they get a good bit of steals at 8.7. A team like this almost is, what do you what do you want from, what do you want? What's your poison? Like I said, you got a guy like Romel Manziel who can, he can get in there, and he got a nice little post up game. He also is a solid free throw shooter for his size. Um, he can step out and hit shots. He's only made 1 3, but he's not scared to shoot from 15 feet out. Of course, you got McMillan, who shoots 45% from the field, and he shoots 41% from three. And of course, Deshaun Ruffin, who I think is probably the best guy in the league, just as a player. He reminds me of a faster PJ Henry, um, almost similar build. Both of them fearless. They both can shoot from outside. They both can get to the bucket for a smaller guy. Ruffin, like I said, that was my first time seeing him live yesterday. That kid is a dog. He's gonna be one of the reasons why this team makes it however far they make it. He can go for 30 at any night. He's also an unselfish guy. He averages 4.7 assists per game, even though he averages 18.8 points per game. So he's gonna get in there and he'll drive and kick. He's gonna drive and finish. Um, like I said, I like this team a lot. Hunt's a solid guy also. I think if they have to get into their bench, that's where you kind of get a drop off because they don't really have a lot of production. The deeper you go on in their rotation, so if you get them outside of like their top, um, I would say like outside of their top seven guys, their numbers really drop off after that. So if you get them into that bench, I think deep in that bench, I think that's where the issues come. But this is a team I think definitely, even though they're at the number 4 spot in my poll, I think that this team is still a team that is one of the teams to beat in the conference. They're going to be a dangerous team in the tournament because you have a guy like Ruffin who can make plays happen on either end because he's a pretty solid defender as well. And he's like I said, he's also an unselfish guy. Even though he can knock down shots all he wants, but he's still not scared to give it up. I don't. He's not averse to giving it up to other guys. And a guy like Manziel who can get in there and bang bodies and then step out and hit some shots. I think they find that good balance where they don't just dump the ball in and post up until you get a shot. If they don't do a lot of that and they work the ball around and get those shooters going, this team is going to be dangerous. And so I think that these two home games are good for them. They should win them both, and they could easily find themselves in a good spot because that was a matchup of the two of the teams that are in front of them this weekend. One of those teams gonna have to lose. Um, and they both have opportunity to lose both of their road games. So there's an opportunity for Jackson State to really jump back up um, to a 2 spot if things go their way and things go against some of the teams ahead of them. So I don't fret about this team being at number 4. They really only that because they lost last night, and the team who they're tied with won last night. So just flip flop. Nothing indicative of what I think of this team. I think they're a top 3 team. I like a lot of the guys they got on their team, so I expect to see them be right there when we get to late in the season and in the tournament. That takes us to our number 3 team as we almost wrap this thing up, and that's Bethune-Cookman. They had a good 2-0 weekend at home on Saturday, beating both the Bama teams. They climbed to 6-3, 9-13 overall. They moved up from 7-3, so they were my big jumpers this weekend. They got a trip to Texas to take on Prairie View and take Southern, so that's a big weekend for these guys. There's a lot of big basketball games on the schedule this week, and this is a big road trip for them. Especially now that they're back in the top 4, you want to be able to keep yourself in position because number 1 is not solidified by no means. So you don't want to lose pace of that. You're only 3 games out, and in third place you're only 3 games out. So you still have a chance at that, but you definitely still have a chance to knock off the team that's directly in front of you. So this is a big road trip for Bethune-Cookman. And they've been able to do a lot better these last few weeks offensively. They're scoring 70 points per game. They're still a solid defensive team. They give up 66 points per game. They're really good on field goal defense at 40%. Their shooting is improving. They're up to 42% from the field. The 3 point shooting is that's probably their weakness. They're shooting 29% from three. They do play good 3 point defense. Opponents only shoot 26% from three, which is first in the league. They are a good rebounding team at 39.2 rebounds per game, which is second in the league. Their opponents average 33 rebounds per game, so they win the rebounding battle most times. They average 13.9 turnovers per game. They force 11.8. They're like I said, they're not a team that's really going to get up and down the court with you. They do average 14.3 assists per game, which leads the conference. So they're not they're a very unselfish team. Um, they block 3.8 shots per game, which is fourth in the league. Like I said, they don't really force a lot of turnovers, so they don't have a lot of steals. They got 6.4 steals per game, but they just play good, solid defense, and they make those timely shots. Um, like I said, they're not going to run up and down the floor with you, but they have Trey Thomas, who averages 17.8 points per game, and Daniel Ruzon is at 14.2. Thomas is shooting 25% from three, um, and Ruzon averages 6 rebounds per game. Also, Corlero And that takes us to our number two team as we almost wrap this thing up. And number two has been number two for basically since these polls came out. And that's Texas Southern. They're 7-1 right now on a 7 game winning streak. 10-11 overall. They are number two last week and number two this week, went 1-0 beating Prairie View. They have 3 games this week. They play Pine Bluff tonight, FAMU and Bethune-Cookman at home on the weekend. So I only counted the Prairie View game for this week. I counted the game tonight and with the games next week, just like I did for Pine Bluff. So they did what you need to do. They came out and played, a team who they right now they're playing better ball than, and they got them a victory with not a lot of trouble. Um, and again, a few. This team is kind of like a couple other teams in this group. They're not a team that they're not a flashy type team. They're not going to wow you with a lot of things, but they just are very very solid. They score 74 points per game. They give up 65, so they play solid defense. They're able to score. They shoot 43% from the field. They play good field goal defense. They don't allow opponents to 36% from the field. They shoot 34% from three. They play pretty solid 3 point defense at 30%. So they just do everything pretty well. They don't do anything flashy. They don't do anything amazing, but they're doing things right. They average 38 rebounds per game, which is third in the league. The opponents average 41. So they do lose the rebounding more than a bit, but not in a bad way. Um, they average 13.4 turnovers per game, which is the fourth fewest. So they're not really careless with the basketball. They force 16 turnovers a game, which is third in the league. They average 12 and a half assists per game, which puts them at sixth in the league. They lead the league in block shots at 5.2, and they force 9.8 steals per game. If Southern wasn't 9-0 right now, which like I said, that's not solidified in anything, then this team would easily be the top team in the conference, and they still have a good case for that, even with one loss. I mean, the one loss was to Southern, but they score pretty well. Hayes averages 16 points per game. McLean's at 15.1. Hunter is up to 9.2. Posey is at 8.7. Weisinger is 8.6. Granger is at 6.5. Jackson Posey is at 6.1. Um, McLean shoots 43%, 40 shoots 48% from three. They don't have a lot of guys that shoot threes. Basically they have about four guys that have more than 20 3-point attempts. So they don't really have a lot of guys that shoot threes, but the guys that shoot them, they shoot them pretty well. You have Weisinger that shoots 46%. Like I said, McLean shoots 48%, and they're solid on the boards. You know, they have a good committee of guys that have at least three rebounds a game. And then McLean averages 4 assists per game. He also has 19 steals. Hunter has 14 blocks, and he has 11 steals. So this is just a very solid team, and they have an opportunity to keep pace in the conference at the top, and B, put themselves in a position to make a push if Southern was to drop a game on this road trip. They do play Southern in a couple weeks, so you don't want to look at that and overlook Bethune-Cookman and FAMU. But if you come out of that game, out of that homestand 2-0, then you're 9-1 against a team that possibly could drop one or two games on the road. So you could be in position to take control of the conference in a week or two, depending on how things go. So I think I don't hear a lot of people talking about Texas Southern men's basketball. I know their team been overshadowed by the women's team doing so good this season, but this is a good team. I don't think they get any other recognition that they deserve. I don't hardly ever hear anybody talk about Texas Southern at all, which is not a surprise because this is a team that typically gets it done in March. They understand that the season is mainly about that, so they're gonna still be a force when you get to the tournament, but they're playing good basketball right now. It's not like they just eking by teams and not really doing anything well, and they just are 7-1 because they just been able to get by teams. But this is a good team, and they could be number one very easily. So I would definitely keep a lookout on this team they're getting better week by week. That's the scary thing. Then I don't even think they're at their peak form yet, and so I think they got an opportunity to continue to grow and win. So I think as they move on and as they get better, they're gonna be a tough team to face. And that takes us to our final team on the list, and that's Southern. Southern's been in this spot since we started these polls. They're 9-0, 14-8 overall. Again, not a flashy team. They do a lot of things. They do run. They shoot threes, but this is a team that plays a platoon style basketball. They play at least 10 or 11 guys a game. They play them in 5-man units off the bench. They have a solid rotation. They don't have they don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to go for 20 a night. They have 3 or 4 guys that can pop off for 17 or 18 and lead you that night. Jordan Johnson averages 10 points per game. He's been a little streaky these last couple games. But Michael Jacobs is at 9.3. Damari Jones is at 9.2. DeAndre Thomas is 8.6. Cam Ambry is at 8.4. Joe Mann is at 6.6. Derek Tazino is at 6. AJ Barnes is at 5.2. Andre Nunley is at 5.2. PJ Duball is at 4.3. You go all the way. Brente Noel is another guy who plays a lot. He's at 3.1. That's 11 guys. So that they play 11 guys pretty much regularly a night, and that makes it tough when you can bring in a guy and you don't have a big drop off. You bring in 5 guys, you take 5 guys out, and you don't have a big drop off. Sometimes the second unit can get a little wild and turn the ball over a little bit, but they've been shown to be able to take punches. Even in a game like last night where they dropped the 15-point lead, they still were able to keep themselves in the game and make those plays when they needed to. Right now, Johnson shoots 37% from the 3-point line. Hasn't really been great recently, last 2 games, but he's the guy who can get hot. Ambery had a big first half against Jackson State last night. He's shooting 42% from 3. Manning's at 41%. They rebound well. They block shots well. They obviously, they're very good forcing turnovers. Andre Nunley has 25 steals. As a little short guy that kind of gets in everybody's way and get his hands on the ball. They have a couple guys average at least 5 rebounds per game. They just do everything kind of as a unit. They average 76 points per game, which is third in the league. They lead the league in scoring defense at 63 points per game. They lead the league in scoring margin at 12.7. So the majority of games they win by a comfortable margin. They shoot 46% from the field, which leads the conference. They're second in shooting field goal defense at 39%. They're third in 3-point shooting at 35%. Uh, they make they make 7.2 threes per game. They're fourth in 3-point defense at 30%. Um, they're fourth in rebounding at 36%. They're second in opponent rebounding at 30 rebounds per game. The rebounding margin, they lead the league in that at 6.2. In that aspect, they turn the ball over uh, 13.3 times per game, which is second in the second fewest in the league. They force 16.4 turnovers, which is second in the league. They average 14 assists per game, which is second in the league. Um, the second in the league in blocks at 5 per game. They're first in the league in steals at 10.3. So they don't really have a deficiency. The closest thing I can say to that is free throw shooting. They shoot 66% from the field, but they've been shown to be able to make the big free throws when they need them. Um, so it's going to be interesting. And they have a tough road trip here. Alabama and Alabama State both going to be tough if they can make it out of this and get into that TSU matchup. Um, Either at 9-1 or 10-0. I think they in a good position to take the regular season crown. But Southern has faded in recent years after a good start. 9-0 is Southern's best start since the SWAC went to 18 games in a season. So this is kind of unheard of, but a good start for Southern is not unheard of. We need to see if this team can not be like the previous teams and fade out as the season goes on. So the first half was good, but if you really want to know what Southern is, you need to see how the second half is going to go. Now they said they built for that portion of the season, so we'll see. But I do like the way this team plays. They're not gonna have that one guy that just goes ham in scoring, but any given night you can see a guy do it inside or out. So they are right now the best team in the conference, and I don't really think it's a big controversy to say that. But that's gonna do it for our show, man. I thank y'all for tuning in, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.